read a lot of books in a year, so they can really start to all blend together sometimes. But I did have some really awesome standouts this year that had really unique premises or really unique elements to them that really stand out in my memory. So today I'm going to be telling you about all of those most unique books that I read in 2022. First up is The Harpy by Megan Hunter. This is a really weird, dark little, creepy little book. The story is mostly told in vignettes, so it feels just very weirdly atmospheric as you're reading it. In this story, you're following this couple and the wife learns that her husband has been cheating on her, but they make an agreement that she'll stay with him as long as he allows her to hurt him 3 times, but he doesn't know how she's gonna hurt him and he doesn't know when she's gonna hurt him. This is one of the weirdest books I've ever read. It lives in this really weird memory phase in my mind of just being such a strange experience, but I also kind of loved it. I would really recommend this if you like things like the movie Black Swan, or if you like movies from the studio A24. This has that weird ethereal quality to it. It kind of feels like a dark fairy tale in some ways, but at the root of it, it's just telling a very simple story of a couple, betrayal, and revenge. Next is Any Man by Amber Tamblyn. This is also told in a vignette type of style, and there's also some poetry. There's a section in here where it's just tweets that are kind of telling the story. So it has a lot of unique elements to it, and the story also has a unique premise. In this story, there is a violent serial rapist who is a woman that goes by the name of Maud. No one knows who Maud is, but she is going around violently abusing men in really graphic, disturbing ways, which are detailed in this book. So just a warning, this is an extremely disturbing and extremely graphic horror book, and it may not be for everybody. In this story, though, you're not focusing on Maud and trying to uncover who Maud is, and it's not a crime story that is really following her. You are instead following the victim who she has abused and seeing the aftermath of this abuse and how they are choosing to cope with what happened to them. It says, as bold as it is timely, Any Man is a tribute to those who have lived through the nightmare of sexual assault and asserts how the power of speaking out can change not only the life of survivors, but so too the world around them. Really wonderfully written, a really unique book, but again, super graphic and disturbing, so highly recommend checking out content warnings and trigger warnings before picking it up. On a lighter note, next up is Your Guide to Not Getting Murdered in a Quaint English Village by Maureen Johnson and Jay Cooper. This is a little book of comics, and I don't really read books of comics too often. I only picked up 2 this year, but I really enjoyed both of them. But this one was quite a fun standout. It just has such a fun, quirky, witty tone to it, and it's not really like anything that I've read before. This is very self-aware and sarcastic and witty, and the concept of it is it calls out all of these things that are common tropes that you see in mysteries and suspense and horror books throughout the years, particularly in English stories, and just makes little mocking references and funny tropes that are commonly used for death in these types of mystery stories. For example, we have the old mill. It's not where murders happen, but for some reason, it's often why. The pond, full of the skeletons of Victorian children, and if you are unwise, you. The hedge maze, you won't find the way out, it finds you. Canopy beds, they have snakes in them. That suit of armor, the one without a sword, unlikely to kill you, it doesn't even have a sword. Wait, didn't it have a sword before? Anyway, this is where they put your body after you've been murdered in order to surprise and terrify the others, so there's really no point in worrying about it. See also That Suit of Armor, the one with the sword. So it's just really quirky and witty and fun, and it's just a quick little read, just a quick little comic collection, but it was really just something that stands out. It would be a really good gift to give someone, especially someone who's a lover of like English mysteries, because they get a lot of the little jokes that are made in here, and it was just a really fun time. Next is The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston. I did not read a lot of romance this year. I don't typically read a ton of romance, but this is one of the ones that I did pick up, and it was definitely a standout. It was just a beautiful, very unique, fresh type of romance story. In it, you're following this woman who is a ghostwriter for a famous author, and she has to write all these romance stories, but she's having trouble now because she believes that romance is dead. Around the same time, her father passes away, and so she has to return to her small town to be with her family and to be there for all the proceedings, and also her father owned a funeral home, and so they have to figure out who's going to take take over the funeral home. And then there's also this element where this ghostwriter who is returning to the funeral home that her family worked in, where her father just died, can also see ghosts. So it just has all these really fun, cool little elements that weave together to build this really beautiful emotional story as she is grieving. And she begins seeing this ghost who is quite handsome and who she develops quite a fondness for, but how do you have a relationship with a ghost? This book just really surprised me. I loved how it was emotional and all the different unique elements that were weaving through it, and it's one of my favorite romances that I have ever read. Next up is Anybody Home by Michael J. Sedlinger. This is a psychological horror novel that is told from the perspective of a seasoned home invader, and they are talking to you. The book is written in second person, educating you on how to execute a perfect home invasion. It is such an interesting story, the way it inserts you into it and makes you execute this home invasion and terrify and torture this family. It's a lot to read, it's a lot to handle, and it did take me a little bit to get into it as I was getting used to the writing style, but the second half I really ended up getting pulled into the story a lot more, and just the overall commentary that this book is having about how we consume things like true crime in our society, I thought was brilliantly executed. It's such a unique way to bring that social commentary into a horror story. It was told in such a unique way, and it really just did the home invasion trope in a completely new way that I've never seen done before. It'll definitely make you uncomfortable, but that's why it's so effective. Next is The Stars Are Not Yet Bells by Lilith Asadi. This is a genre-bending story that has some literary fiction elements to it, some magical elements to it, some mystery and horror elements to it as well. You're following this woman as she is beginning to lose her memories due to Alzheimer's, and she is trying to piece back together the story of her history, how she got to this island that she lives on, what the mysterious lights are, what happened to her husband's company, and what happened to her former lover that she brought with her to the island as well. She's got a lot of things going on around her and doesn't really know how to make sense of it, and can't fully keep sense of time and place of where she is due to the Alzheimer's. It is such a haunting story. It is written so well, and it's just so unique. I can't really think of anything to compare it to because it was just in its own category, and because it brings all these different genres together. Looking at the back, it is described as a prophetic fever dream sprung from a singular imagination. I think that is such a perfect way to describe it. Reading it was almost just like being in a dream. It had such an ethereal quality about it. I didn't end up fully loving the story. It's not a new 5-star favorite by any means, but it was just so unique and such a beautiful story that I do recommend it. Next is Tales from the Gas Station Volume 1 by Jack Townsend. I read this book in a vlog that I did where I was reading horror books that originated on the No Sleep subreddit. So this is unique in that it was created from that. It was created by a person going on Reddit and writing short stories and building on it over time. And it's actually turned into a book series. So there are several different volumes of it, but also just the story that's being told in here is quite unique. And I can't really think of any other horror book I've read that has been like this. You're following a night shift clerk who works at a 24-hour gas station in the middle of this small town, who witnesses all these weird things happening in his gas station and in his town. He has all these gnomes that keep appearing at the gas station. He's got a hole in the back that he keeps on finding himself digging, and he doesn't know why. He has these periods of blackout with his memory, and he's facing this fatal disease where he has a lot of insomnia and memory blackouts as well. So it is just a book of weirdness. I compare this sort of to watching Rick and Morty, which is a really weird comparison for a horror book, but it just works because that's how weird this story is. If you're looking for something witty and fun that just doesn't take itself too seriously and a horror comedy, and you just want to read something really weird and really unique, I would definitely recommend giving this a try because it is all of those things. Next up is You've Lost a Lot of Blood by Eric LaRocca. This was such a weird little horror novella, as most of Eric LaRocca's stuff is. This one is telling two different stories. There is this frame narrative of this couple where this guy killed the other one, or you know he wants to kill the other one, but then you're also reading the story that that guy wrote, which is about this woman who is going to work on this video game called You've Lost a Lot of Blood, and she's bringing her brother with her, and then you're getting all these other elements of like poetry this guy wrote, and it's just really weird how the two come together. But I actually ended up really enjoying it. I really enjoy Eric LaRocca's writing. I think it's always just so creepy and grotesque and descriptive and wonderful, and then also the way these two stories came together was just really unique and interesting and surprising. It's definitely one of those books that once you finish it and see what's going on, you're like, oh my goodness, I want to read this all over again with that context. Super cool book. Super weird, super unique. Next up is The Pallbearer's Club by Paul Tremblay. I like to describe this as a psychological examination of friendship versus a thriller or a horror, as Paul Tremblay typically gets categorized. You're reading the story of this guy named Art Barbara, who is recounting his life through a memoir called The Pallbearer's Club. So you're reading his memoir, but in it you're also getting annotations from his friend who he is having read the story and leave these comments. So that's what makes this so unique, is that you get annotations throughout, which isn't something I've experienced a lot in books. I've seen it a few times, but it is a pretty unique element. And overall, this book just really has an interesting quality to it that makes it feel really unique, because you're just really following the story of this guy's life and his perception on it, and then you're getting a very contradicting opinion from his friend who is leaving the annotations in it as well. When they were younger, back when they were teens, he started this club called the Pallbearers Club, where they would go and help be pallbearers at funerals for people who didn't have a lot of people in their lives. And that's where he met this girl, and they became friends, and they were on again, off again friends throughout their lives. And as he recounts the details of his story, it kind of turns into a horror story for him of what he thinks was going on in their friendship. But she has a lot of pushback to say, and I really loved her character in particular. As the story goes on, I liked Art less and less and less, and I liked her more and more and more, and it was just really interesting how it shows you these two different sides of the friendship and kind of leaves you to take away from it whatever you want to take away from it. I thought it was really fun. It's definitely a standout, and it was probably one of my favorite reads of the year. Next is How High We Go in the Dark by Sequoia Nagamatsu. I will say I did not fully love this story, but I did think it was really unique and worth mentioning. It reads like a short story collection, but it is not technically a short story collection. And it says, for fans of Cloud Atlas and Station 11, a spellbinding and profoundly prescient debut that follows a cast of intricately linked characters over hundreds of years as humanity struggles to rebuild itself in the aftermath of a climate plague. A daring and deeply heartfelt work of mind-bending imagination from a singular new voice. The idea of this in itself and how it's structured is super unique, because it feels like you're reading a short story collection because you get all these different people and perspectives over hundreds of years, but it does end up all connecting. But also just some of the parts of what you're reading in here are so unique. Particularly the story in here that ties to the title was really, really unique and weird. There's a part in here about this roller coaster that's really dark and really unique. So it does stand out to me in this being unlike really anything I've ever read before and having all these unique story elements to it, but it didn't totally work for me all the way through. I think I ended up giving it like a 3 star, so I did still enjoy it, but I just didn't love it. But I could not give this list of books without putting this one on there. And then probably the most unique book I read all of this year is S. That is what this book is called, the letter S. This is by J.J. Abrams and Doug Dorst, and I have an entire dedicated vlog to reading and exploring this book. The book is actually within this case, and you're reading this book called Ship of Theseus within the story of S. And then within here, there are a lot of different inserts in the stories and a lot of annotations that you're reading, because the idea of this is that this is a library book that these two people found, and they were writing notes back and forth, and they're trying to piece together the lore of this universe. And you get these inserted letters and postcards, and you're just trying to piece together the mystery of this story, and it's really difficult to explain because it is just such a unique thing. But I did have a lot of fun just exploring this and seeing what it was like and creating that reading vlog, so I will have that link down below. This is just kind of one of those weird standout books that is not a typical book at all. You do not read this like a normal book. This takes a lot of work and a lot of effort, and I didn't end up loving it, so I don't really recommend it unless you're really interested in the experience of it. If you like things like those murder mystery puzzle boxes that you're trying to put all the artifacts out and piece it all together, then I think you'll enjoy this more. But it is also kind of more of a sci-fi action type story versus being a mystery thriller. So that's also not even the most comparable thing to know if you'll enjoy this. It's just a weird book, very unique, and was definitely the standout experience for my reading this year. So that is it for my most unique reads of 2022. Let me know if I convinced you to pick any of these up down in the comments below, and also let me know what was your most unique reads of 2022. But that is it for me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye!